our identities are really tied to the activities that we do every single day. So
Hmm.
even if you feel like an imposter, if you start doing that activity every single day, at some point it will just blend and be part of your identity. So if you feel like an imposter, it's because you're not actually behaving like a designer, or you're not behaving like a small business owner. And so I'm
Yeah.
not saying that you won't feel it. I'm saying you have the ability to get rid of it if you change your behaviors.
Hi, Karina. Welcome to the show.
I am so excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you here. So, I want to start with how you turned your passion into a successful career because that's pretty extraordinary to be able to do that. So, let's start with that.
So I'm a designer by trade, and I got into the crafting space, which is a really weird space for a designer to decide to go in. When I was working on my doctorate, I thought I was gonna be doing like minimalistic Bob Dylan posters because that's what you do in school. You're like making this beautiful stuff, and I got in the crafting space, which is more of a
Mhm.
hobbyist type space, right?
Yeah.
So, in particular, digital scrapbooking, then became a scrapbooking designer, then became a fabric designer for the quilting world. So not a general fabric designer, but 100% cotton quilting designer, which is a very specific industry as well. And so I took all these things that were hobbies that I really liked and started designing for them. Now, there were other ways you can get into these things. Like I could have been a sewing pattern designer, or
Mhm.
I could have been, what they call like a scrapbooking designer, which is someone who like builds the layouts. They don't build the papers, they build the layout so people can see how to build them. So there are lots of ways that I could have gotten into these industries, but I did it from the realm I knew best, which was design. And at the end of the day, when anyone is looking for taking their passion or their hobbies and turning them into business, it's really about choosing and chunking down all the different ways they could come into it and choosing the best one that fits their expertise.
Okay. So, what got you really excited about the fabric design piece and what drew you into that?
So, I mean, come on, it's fabric. When you get like something that you can touch and feel, it feels more amazing, right? Like
Hmm.
if you were maybe you were a manufacturer for like plants or something and you saw your plant in Target, that would feel pretty darn cool, right?
Yeah.
So that's the whole thing with fabric or even scrapbooking or paper design or wallpaper design or any of these things is that once you see them in physical format, even if you don't maybe
Hmm.
see them in a store, it's just so cool. Like you're like, oh my gosh, that's my
Yeah.
product. And not only in the fabric industry, in the one that I'm in, which is the 100% quilting cottons, my name is on the seam of every single fabric I do. So like you would buy a
Wow.
Carina Gardner fabric.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it's
I
fun.
could just imagine that would be an amazing feeling to see your product in a store and actually be like, I made that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really really fun, and that's what drew me into the industry. Ironically, and I'm super happy to talk about this, is I've been in business for about 16 years. I've owned multiple
Wow.
design businesses. We've done physical product businesses. We had this company. I still own this company, Mini Lou, but we don't do physical with it anymore. But we did deals with Nordstrom. We did 500 independent
Amazing.
stores. And people are always like, well, how'd you get those? I was just like,
Hmm.
distribution, distribution, distribution. And people don't know how to get distribution, which is understandable because when you first get into it, you're kind of like, how do I even start? How do I figure it out?
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of it is research within your own specific industry, like understanding how the wheels turn in that manufacturing industry. We have designers come to us all the time saying, I want to be in Target. And I'm like, well, let me tell you the rules of Target. Once they
Right.
hear the rules, I'm kind of like, and so you need to make this many million before they're going to even consider you for this little portion of their business. And people don't realize that because they just don't
Yeah.
understand the rules of whatever industry they've gotten into.
So, how did you learn about it? Did you find yourself a mentor? Did you just ask questions? And where did you know to find this information and how did you learn?
So I think the biggest thing, of course, is like, I hate to say this, but you make less money by just like deciding you're going to delve in and like take a lower check or just like kind of get into something and figure it out. The way I got into it initially, so I started in a product category called digital scrapbooking. Very popular at the time, 16 years ago, very, very popular. And the reason I got in because it was low barrier to entry. And what I would do is create like 12 by 12 papers and I would sell them online. Well, so I don't have to produce inventory, right?
Right.
I'm just selling like a product that someone can buy. And I was a poor college student. I was still working on my doctorate at the time. And so I was like, and I had two very small children. My husband was in law school. I mean, like we were so poor. I was like, I cannot buy inventory, right?
Yeah.
And so I started selling this stuff online. Well, it's like due diligence or paying your dues. Any of you who've listened who are entrepreneurs, the first couple of years suck, right? I made $300 that year, and I had a PhD in design, and yet I still couldn't move the needle. And I was on my own website doing my own thing, and this is where the story gets good. About 11 months in, I'm talking to some other people in the industry, like I was friends with people who were in the scrapbooking world. And I just said, I'm having trouble making this work. I've made $300 in the last 11 months. I've made so much product. I've built it on my own website. There's all this stuff. And someone said to me, hey, maybe you should go check out this shop that's really big called Two Peas in a Bucket. They don't exist anymore, by the way, but they were an online site where you could purchase physical scrapbooking goods. They had just opened a digital scrapbooking shop under the same brand. So they had audience, right? They had eyeballs.
Yeah.
And, but they wanted to take a huge commission from me. And right now I was doing 100% on my own site, and they wanted to take like 40%, which by the way, now I know, not that much, actually, not a very big commission in the digital world. No, my best shops where I make like seriously hundreds of thousands of dollars of every year, they take an 80% commission. So people don't realize, like, especially as a designer, if you don't have audience, like commission is the audience piece. It's like your little employee that you're giving over to a shop. So they were taking 40%. And I said, you know what do I have to lose? Like I put all of my products in there, was like, let's just try it. Remember, I made $300 in 11 months. I made $300 that first month. I think it was something like $600 or $800 second month. I got up to $1,000 by month 3. Kind of at the height of that, I was doing about $4,000 a month. And I wasn't doing that much work. I was just designing and uploading. So once you kind of figure out distribution is everything, they had eyeballs, I did not. Then if you take every business that you have out there and start thinking about it in those terms, who has the eyeballs? Who can I collaborate with? Who can I give money to? Who can I give a portion of my product or pricing to get in front of those eyeballs? It changes everything.
That's incredible. And then, within 3 years, you were a multi-million-dollar business. So how did you go from that, like sort of 4,000 a month to then scaling so dramatically?
Well, let me talk to you about it. And so it's been only in the last 3 years we started a new program.
Okay.
So we didn't go to multi-million in the design businesses. Design businesses are interesting. Gotcha. I don't want to say that they have a cap to them, but I will say that 200 to 300,000 is more than anybody ever expects a designer to make. I would say the average in the industry when you come out of school is about $55,000. So when you finish a university degree, very often it's about $55,000 is what you make in the industry. But as an entrepreneur, you can make more, right? And so most of the contractors I know average about $80,000 a year. So I was making still 2 to 3 times what any other regular designer in the industry was doing. And I was doing it mostly off of digital. So even though I was doing all these physical products that people started to get to know me for because of brand recognition, I was still making almost all of my money from these digital different products that I started creating. So I did that for about 13 years on my own, loved it, was feeling really good about it. But probably around 10 years in, so many people were emailing me asking if they could be my intern or if they could learn from me or if I could. So I finally opened up a program basically 3 years ago. I was like, I'm just going to do this. I'll just like teach design. So I have a PhD in design from the University of Minnesota. And I was like, I'll teach design, make sure that because a lot of times the design work isn't good enough. And I'm just like, they don't realize it. And so if we could get their design work better and then give them some business strategies, all of them can make this amount of money. It's not that hard in my mind, So I opened up a program That program went to multi-million in less, it was really 2 years. Like it was super duper
Incredible.
fast. And it's because of the way we taught. We very much taught, like not only do you have to have amazing, phenomenal design work, but here are the business strategies you've been missing that no one's talking about because when I taught at the university, we don't talk about business. We're trying to teach design, right? And get
Yep.
people to be great designers.
Yep.
If you go get an MBA, they're not going to talk about your specific industry because they're doing case studies and general things. And a lot of times MBAs too, and I don't really understand this, it doesn't feel very entrepreneurial. It's more like you're a business associate directly in a very large corporation with like
Yes.
200 to 5,000 people, right?
Yep.
It's very different than if you're a solopreneur or you're like, you are one person with a 5-person team who's just trying to navigate and make enough money to like really build something really good for yourself. And so when we started really talking to designers in this way and really talking about distribution, strategies for success, kind of like some of the hardships, because that's the other thing in design. Everyone loves to talk about how like fun it is and fulfilling it is, because that's when we talk about hobbies and passions, we think, well, it must be fun and fulfilling. And we started being like, listen, life is 50-50. Yes, you are going to love this. It's going to be amazing. You're going to feel good. But on this other end, you're going to do stuff you do not like to do. You're going to have to post listings. You're going to have to learn SEO. You're going to have to, like, there are these things that you're going to have to learn. And so I think people kind of appreciated the honesty we kind of brought to the table and just said, listen, you are going to love this. You are also going to hate this, but it will work.
Yeah. That's what I always tell business owners. It's like, you're not going to love every part of your business. There's not a single business owner I know who loves every single piece of it every single day. And that's the reality. So that's really refreshing to hear you talk about that.
Yeah.
What are some of those strategies that you find that they're missing when they come to you, or that you just see in general with business owners that they should be implementing and maybe they're not?
Yeah, I think the biggest, I will say, overall strategy that doesn't just fit design, because we have very specific things for designers. I know not all of the people listening here are designers, but let me tell you the number one thing that we see missing across the board for business owners, because I do talk to a lot of business owners. I have lots of CEO girlfriends and we all hang out. Yeah. The number one thing is volume. People do not understand the value of volume. So in design specifically, it's number of products. So if you're only making 2 or 3 products a week, you just simply can't compete with me who's making 20 products a week and coming out with 5,000 designs a year. You can't compete with me, right?
Yeah.
So because it doesn't matter if only 20% of my products are really exceptional and good. They're still higher than the volume of the designer who's producing so little. But that's actually also not the case, because the more you produce, the better you get, period. And so like as a designer, if I'm producing 20 a week, I'm becoming a better designer, a more desirable designer for the marketplace, because I'm having to push myself so hard to produce better products, right? Same with any business out there. It doesn't even matter what the business is. If your volume, if you're only selling one product, it can be a great, fabulous product, but it's like you've got to really figure out volume in leads then. Like, how do you get enough people to see that one product to make sure that it's really, really, really like out there and seeing it? And a lot of times people don't have enough strategies in distribution to get enough people to see the one thing. But I will tell you, if you have more than one thing, that actually helps as well, because then suddenly you can put them right next to each other so that people can understand the value.
That's interesting. That's really interesting. So how about for you, when you were like in terms of building your business, what kind of mistakes did you make that maybe looking back, you're like, I wish I knew this, or I wish I did that differently?
Gosh, I think the number one mistake I made was thinking that my website was the end all. Like now we tell our designers they don't even need a website for like the first 6 months to a year. Like you should be on other people's platforms. Well, think if I had started at 2 peas in the bucket right from the get-go. I would have started making money right from the get-go. People, especially in this day and age, I think websites were a little more relevant, ironically, even 10 years ago, because people were still blogging. People went to specific websites. That has changed. That has completely changed. People go to the bigger conglomerate websites. They're going to Amazon. They're going to Etsy. They're going to Shutterstock. So they're going to the bigger websites. So like your little website can't compete unless the SEO is like amazing. And you're giving such relevant information, which by the way, takes a lot of time in and of itself. And if you're a designer, you should be designing. You shouldn't be an influencer. If you're an influencer, you should be influencing, not designing, right? And so I think it's like people get a little mixed up about what their job is. And so then they try to do a lot of little things and they don't feel like they can't see it all add up. Whereas if you do one thing really well, so for us in design, it's producing volume of product. So it's like design, platform, then you see this total and complete rise in sales. So you can see like this is how it works. If you're an influencer, right, then it's number of cool things on your blog and your social media post or YouTube, whatever you've decided it's going to be, so that you can see the volume of subscribers that hit you, right? You're not going to see this if you're like, I'm trying to blog, I'm trying to design, I'm also trying to do Facebook ads, it's too hard to see because you're one person and there's only so much you can do. So activities and prioritization of activities is huge.
How do you prioritize your time and delegate? Because I'm imagining you have quite a team now. So how do you delegate and prioritize what you need to be doing?
It's rough. I will say, especially at the beginning, I sucked at it. So anyone who's like got a new team, I'm just going to tell you, delegation is hard because you just really believe that you're the only one who can do that thing. Mm-hmm. And the more I dug in, the more I'm like, oh, I'm like really not the best at that thing. Like someone else can do it so much better. But it's almost like everyone has to experience it to really realize it. So for me, I am the face and founder of the company. And so, for example, I'm doing this podcast with you. I probably wouldn't have someone on my team do that. So it's an only activity I'm going to do. So it's a priority on my list. I do a lot of speaking engagements. I also will do guest lectures at universities. There are like certain things that I'll do, and those are priority over everything else. I write all the coursework, or at least I write it, and I might delegate out videos to my team to do, but like I'm still writing the coursework, so I know, what's going to come up. Things that I thought were, I should say this, things that convert to high value. So for example, I had never given away, I gave away one time and it was a bad choice, Facebook ads. So Google ads, Facebook ads. I'm the one who pays the money for those. I spend a lot of money in those. So like if I delegate it to someone, then I have to really trust them for the sheer volume of cash that's going out to those things. And so because of that, I have held on to it because I've decided those are a high value activity, if that makes sense. So anything that I kind of look at and I go, is that worth my time? I like literally will shove off onto somebody else and just be like, can someone take this? Or I'll hand it over to one of my leaders and say, just take take this, run with it, enjoy it.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would an average day for you look like?
Well, let's see. I'm like, I have my whole, like, people talk about time stamping. I'm like, you can literally know my whole life. My whole team knows my whole life, and my executive assistant knows my life. So I usually start my day around 7. That's like kind of my favorite. I start around 7. I try not to have any meetings until about 8:30. That didn't happen this morning because we're under the gun for several things that we're working on right now, but usually around 8:30 or so. An average day usually looks like I try to only have 2 or 3 meetings depending on the day. Then it's really digging into writing coursework, building, YouTube videos if that's what we're working on or whatever. But we actually have segmented out the week. So most of my meetings actually happen on Mondays and Fridays. So this was actually I'm like looking at it. I'm like in meetings literally all day today. But Tuesdays is our main day. So we have a program called Design Suite Mastermind. So that's our teaching day. So a lot of times I make myself available so I can come and teach. I don't teach all the things, but like we'll have fun meetings or I'll be meeting up with the designers to do whatever. So Tuesdays I tend to leave open for that. And then Wednesdays and Thursdays, no one in the company is allowed to have meetings. That's our goal anyway.
Nice.
So that way everyone can do their deep work. And get done what they needed done. Like, building landing pages or funnels, they take hours at a time. And if you get that broken up too much, it's really difficult to remember, like, did I zap that from here to there? Did it move from this, because we have so much technology in our companies. We have like a huge stack of technology. And so every person is working on their things. Now, coaches in my program, they're working with designers on Wednesdays and Thursdays because that's their deep work, right? So they're coaching on those days, right? For me, Wednesdays and Thursdays right now, we have 17 courses in our program, and we are making a transition that I'm not allowed to talk about right now. I don't know when this is coming out, but in September, we kind of made a couple of announcements, and then we pulled them back because we're in the middle of a licensing agreement. But there's some big announcements in September, which was requiring a lot of coursework from me. So because of that, Wednesdays and Thursdays, I'm pretty deep in rebuilding videos, audios, credit hour stuff. Yeah, it's pretty fun.
That sounds exciting. That sounds like a very exciting surprise that's coming. Do you ever struggle with creative blocks, like when you're creating courses or when you're creating designs where you're just like, I have nothing and I don't know what to do? And then how do you work through that?
I don't have a lot of creative blocks. And I know that a lot of people do. When I've talked about it, I will say it's just because you haven't gotten out of yourself enough to enjoy life. And the reason I don't have as many creative blocks is at the time of this podcast, literally a week and a half ago, I was in Amsterdam for a week and I was not allowed to work very much. I was with 2 other CEOs. We did work together. We had a photo shoot, but then we went to museums and like, I just took it all in. Like for me, it was like all this like ideas for new creative stuff I could do. 2 weeks from now, I'm going to Japan with my family and I'm going to be spending the entire time videotaping all the cool design stuff, signage, the way they use their fonts and all their those things. It used to not be like this where I'd be traveling so much to get inspiration. When I used to do this, like I would just literally go to my local museum. I'd go to the park. I live in Salt Lake, so downtown Salt Lake, and I would go videotape all the signage around me, and I would get a feel for like the way people were using brick or how they were using tile in a bathroom. And so usually I say, if you're in a creative block, there's one of 2 things going on. One, you're not looking. Because if you're looking, there's so much inspiration out there. But the second thing is you probably have something else going on that's keeping you blocked. And it's usually a personal struggle, right? Yeah. There's usually something personal going on in your life. You're either self-negative talking to yourself. There's people out there who are saying that you're not good enough or things are like, there's all these external forces. I find that's actually usually the thing that's going on. We have designers, we have a video chat community so that our designers know each other. They see each other's faces, they talk to each other a lot. Nice. And it's a really big group. So it's pretty incredible that we're able to do this. They will talk about my son who has autism is having a rough day today. I'm not going to get to designing. I'm feeling like a failure, right? That has everything to do with like a personal circumstance and nothing to do with creative block. But you're feeling blocked creatively because you're so occupied with the hard things that are happening in your life. And that is to be expected, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. How do you deal with any like those external forces, like pressures in the family or just life in general when something comes up? How do you handle it?
I think it's all about bigger vision. Ironically, I might keep it together. Ironically, last night my father-in-law just passed away. So here's the thing. Everyone has stuff going on in their life. You just don't know about it. I attended meetings this morning. My team didn't know. Right? It's you have to have such a bigger vision for what you're producing. I know what we're doing. We are serving women in such a high capacity doing what we're doing. Yeah. And since I have such a high vision for that, yes, am I going to be sad later? Am I going to have a hard time later? Am I working with my family to make sure my kids are okay and all this? Yeah, the answer is yes. But I don't let it get into the way of my everyday vision for what I need to do on my team to make sure that we can go. It doesn't mean that I don't say take time off or, I think those things are important. But I think that sometimes people are lacking the vision of like how big they really can be, how much they can contribute to the world. And the moment you have that, it is very hard to get off track. Like we just are bulldozing forward because we know what we can do for people.
Yeah, I'm really sorry about your loss. And thank you for being here still today. I'm amazed.
You were on my calendar. Guess what?
Yeah.
You were on my calendar. And I think that's the other thing. People don't pay attention. I have a very strong sense of duty. If
Hmm.
it's on my calendar, I do it. And it has to
Yeah.
be something very big. I mean, yes, this was a big deal, but it was also not my parents. It was
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
husband. So it's more I'm in support of my family, right? And making sure they're okay.
Hmm.
My kids are okay. My husband's okay. And so, maybe I would have canceled today if it had been my parents or,
Yeah.
something like that. But, I have a really strong sense of duty. And I also think that great entrepreneurs they do what they say they're going to do.
Yes, I agree. I agree. How have you, because it sounds like you have a lot of resilience and great discipline. Um, were you always this way? Are these things that you've developed throughout your career and throughout your business, or is this who you are?
I do think there has to be a little bit of like maybe I started out a little bit this way, but then like I got confirmation that it was the correct behavior. I think that
Mm,
like it's
yeah.
the so like if I showed up on time to things as a business owner, then people trusted me more, right? Like
Yes.
if I was more committed to, my deadlines as a designer and maybe even turn things in early because I really wanted to make sure they knew I was like committed to doing it, then they trusted me more because here's the
Hmm.
thing, and I'm experiencing this with a team. What you find out is that people's experiences to your team are important. Their ability and their strategies are very important. But I will choose every day the person who is reliable and who will show up for me over the person who is smart and just thinks that they know everything about the job and that they're like a good performer in that way, but they are unreliable and difficult to work with all every day. And so you
Yeah.
start to kind of figure out that, I think I'm a good designer. I don't think I am some anomaly designer, but I am a very reliable designer. And I think in our businesses, I'm also a reliable CEO. I will show up if someone on my team needs it. Like I will show up for
Yeah.
them in any way I need to show up for them. And I think that is a characteristic that can be developed.
Mhm. Definitely. Can you tell us more about how you've built your team? You've touched on those qualities you look for. How do you know that this is the right person you want on your team? And have you ever like made bad choices and had to? Yeah.
I'm
Okay.
like laughing. I'm just like, all I do is make bad choices. Like, if you guys are listening to this podcast episode and you're just like, Karina just has it together, I can tell you right now to build a company the way I've currently built it. Like, my design businesses, they were slow, soft. I was able to like
Hmm.
kind of maneuver nicely because I was really a solopreneur with like an assistant once in a while. Okay.
Yeah.
This current business I have, I think there are 17 of us on the team, maybe more. I don't know at this point. But what happens is you hire people and then you fire them very quickly. And the first few fires, you just bawl. Like I'd get off
I
the
bet.
get off the call and I would just cry because I was like, I really wanted that person to work and I really liked them and they were enjoyable and like all the things that you're like little broken heart. But then
Hmm.
I would say about two or three in, it was not hard to fire at all because it became really obvious that the team organizational structure mattered. And without even knowing it, you as the CEO of your company start to put out like what you believe in without even really, even though we had a mission statement and
Yes.
we have core values, like it became very obvious. Like Karina cares about things being done efficiently. She cares about things being done fast. We're a digital company, so it's like things have to happen as quickly as possible. And so when we saw that there were team members who couldn't keep up with us, who couldn't maneuver or pivot as fast as we could, then it was like you can't stay because when you're growing
Yeah.
at scaling in even a 2 year period as fast as we did, it only took, we had members who'd last 2 months because they were right for the job at the beginning, but we had moved so quickly that in 2 months they were behind. And that
Right.
sucks. It's like telling someone, listen, you were right for the job. You've done a pretty good job, but you've already slunk behind where we're at and you can't catch up. Unfortunately, we have to let you go. That sucks.
I bet.
It sucks.
Yeah.
So I will say a lot of hiring and firing. And now I will say we've kind of I don't want to say perfected, but we've gotten really good at, because hiring can take up a lot of your time, right? We
For
now
sure.
have a group interview process that we do so that we can
Nice.
like just pick out the right personalities from the get-go. We block off 2 or 3 hours and we just finish interviewing them all the same day. So we're like pushing through in a group setting and individual setting until we can get the right person. And then we pull them directly in the job. They start the next week. So we
Okay.
do it very, very fast. There is a probationary period, usually the first 90 days at this point, where we're kind of just making sure you're a good fit for the team, the organizational behavior. There's also now at this point 3 team members, myself, usually Crystal, who's our operations lead, and then the leader of whatever team that person's going on. All 3 of us are in that interview. And
Oh,
what we
good.
find is that we just get a better pulse for the right person with 3 of us than when it was just me.
That makes sense. That makes sense. And yeah, I could see how that would be really helpful to have those other people there because you're all going to pick up on different cues from the person and different perspectives. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
How do you take care of yourself? So, as the CEO of this company and with so much going on, how do you take care of you?
I am a huge reader, and I'm actually,
Nice.
ironically, I know people like will sometimes see me on podcasts and they'll be like, are you sure? I'm like actually an introvert. And the only reason
Ah,
I designed for as many years as I did by myself is because I was an introvert, because I liked being by myself and designing and just doing my thing, right? For me, definitely vacation on, as often as possible. I have a lot right this very second, but I would say
yeah.
probably every 3 to 4 months, I force myself on some kind of trip, like maybe not a vacation, but at least a trip to get myself out of myself. I have 3 kids and
Yeah.
they are all very delightful in their own ways. So just being able to walk away from my office and work with them and hang out with them, lots of
Hmm.
readings in the evenings. And then, I think if you have a spouse or partner, whatever connection you can get with them, because that is really rough. Especially,
Yeah.
we just went through a rough week because we're enrolling in some beta programs that we're working on. And I, like, and all the crazy stuff happening, like, my husband and I haven't had a chance to be together by ourselves to really talk through things. So trying to find that time is difficult, but it's necessary. So if you can find it, it's really important.
Thank you for that. Sorry, my dog is barking like crazy. I think there's a bird. Usually the birds are like really active right now, so
I was just glad it
it's
wasn't
very
my dog.
exciting. No, it's always my dog on these interviews. It's always mine that goes off. Yeah. He'll yeah, there he goes. He's calming down. No, no, he's not. Okay. What are your tips for people who want to start a creative-based business in terms of just getting started and like where do they begin?
Yeah, I mean, so of course it depends on your business, right? But maybe I can talk first about I have like there are 3 ways I like to kind of dissect a creative business. I think this really helps a little bit. So there's the first layer, which is you do the thing and sell the thing. So like I always use the example of jam. Like, so if you can jams, right, you can sell the physical jams to make money, right? So that's layer number 1. If you're in digital scrapbooking like me, you sell the digital scrapbooking papers. That's how you make money, right? So there's always layer 1, which is you make the product, you sell the product, right? The second layer is education. So make the product and you educate other people on how to make the product, right? So that's a higher cost thing. It's much more higher level. It's just kind of a different category. I would not say one is better than the other because I've done both. And I will
Right.
say there are pros and benefits, like there are pros and cons to both, right? Like we used to sell lots of product and, that did really well. Now we sell an educational program and that does really well, but it
Hmm.
depends on where you're coming from. The third
Okay.
level we call is like degree seeking or certification. So like offering an educational program that people actually have to jump through hurdles to show
Hmm.
that they are capable of doing it. And that's really like people think that happens at the main educational level, but it doesn't. Like, I mean,
Right.
it just really doesn't. If you teach someone how to can jam, they take the class. How do you know that they actually know how to do it? So if they sell it, that it's really good and that it's like actually like sealed and all that
Right.
other stuff, right? So the next layer is certification, or some kind of degree or something like that. And those are very difficult because now you have to like really show that this person is capable of doing the thing that you've taught them to do. So usually that's also
Yeah.
next level. More work, more money, but that's always the case. More work, more money. So
Yep. Yeah, definitely. So, okay. So for like those creatives who are listening and they have that passion, they want to turn to a business. What if like, a lot of them struggle with doubts, like, will anyone ever buy this? Can I turn my hobby into a business? Who would pay me to do this? And
Mhm.
how do you address those concerns, like with your students, with your people in your world?
All right, so I have a great story about this because it was the first time
Perfect.
I kind of realized this. It's that imposter syndrome, right?
Hmm.
Like everyone deals with it. They feel like they're not good enough or they're not enough or whatever, okay? So I'm going to tell about this from the perspective of design, but this works for any field of
Yeah.
study. So her name was Jen, but she was 6 months in my program, and we were kind of doing a coaching call with everybody. So like lots of people there listening to this, and she was like, "Karina, I feel like I'm not a designer." And I was like,
Mm.
"Okay, well, let's dig into that a little bit." And I said, "So tell me this, do you feel like you are a quilter?" And I happen to know she sewed every single day. She was a brand ambassador for Bernina. She had all these things. And she was like, "Yes." And I was like, "Well, tell me why." She said, "Well, I sew every single day." I was like, "Okay, so like you sew quilts every day?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "Okay, so you feel like you were absolutely like a sewer or a quilter?" She was like, "Yes." I was like, "Okay, good." I was like, "Do you feel like you are a mother?" And I happen to know she had 6 daughters. So I was
Oh,
like,
wow.
"Do you feel like you're a mother?" And she was like, "Yes." I was like, "But why?" She was like, "Well, every day I have to parent. Like I have to drive my
Hmm.
kids to stuff and I have to." I was like, "Okay." I was like, "Do you design every day?" And she was like, and I was like, "Here's the
Uh,
problem. Our identities are really tied to the activities that we do every single day. So
mhm.
even if you feel like an imposter, if you start doing that activity every single day, at some point it will just blend and be part of your identity. So if you feel like an imposter, it's because you're not actually behaving like a designer, or you're not behaving like a small business owner. And so I'm
Yeah.
not saying that you won't feel it. I'm saying you have the ability to get rid of it if you change your behaviors.
That is such great advice. I love that. It reminds me of a podcast I listened to last fall when I was like, I want to get into running, but I don't know. I've never been a runner. And I listened to this
That was me.
podcast. No way.
Yes. Oh no,
Yeah.
I mean I didn't do that, but I'm just saying like me too. Like I actually have a
Yeah.
story about running and how much I hated running, but I wanted to be a runner. And so I
Yeah.
literally ran 3 times a week until I did my first half marathon and I was like, I think I'm a
Amazing.
runner.
Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, the podcast I listened to, she was like, if you run, you're a runner. Like, that's it. Doesn't matter if you're going fast. It doesn't matter if you're stopping. It doesn't matter if you go like 1 kilometer, 10 kilometers. If you run, you're a runner. And I was like,
Yeah.
what? Like, that's it?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just the activity. And it doesn't mean that
Yeah,
you won't still feel that imposter syndrome the first 2 weeks, 3 months that you're
for
running,
sure.
right? The first year you're a designer, the first year you're an entrepreneur, you still are going to feel those doubts. But at some point, you will be surprised. You will wake up one day and you'll be like, I am this thing. Like,
Hmm.
I can't even deny that I'm this thing because I just do this thing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Amazing. I would love to ask you what you're excited about next. That was going to be my next question, but I feel like you have this big exciting thing that you're not allowed to talk
I'm
about.
not allowed to
So,
talk about, but I will say in September, if you go check out carinagardner.com, there will be a new website linked. If any of you have been hanging around, you may have heard us talking about running the betas on this, but I'll
mhm.
just say it's pretty big. It's going to be a 4-year commitment for our team to do this big thing.
Wow.
It's craziness. And if someone had told me 3 years ago that we would be pursuing what we're pursuing, I would have just not believed them. And that's really the power of making really big moves because it's
Mhm.
like every step you make along the way, it leads you to something that you had no idea was possible for you or your team, but like makes so much sense.
Yeah. How do you make those big moves? Like, do you just know it's going to work? Is it faith? What is it that allows you to do
I
that?
do have a lot of faith that things are going to work out. I do.
Hmm.
I kind of a little bit, I mean, I believe in God, but I also kind of believe in this whole universe idea. Like, I kind of just believe that, like, if you want something bad enough, there are enough good energy, positive vibes in this universe that really, I think it really wants you to win. And
Yeah.
so I've never felt in my life, I've had bad things happen in my life. I'm just going to start by saying that my team, my designers know this because I'm very open and vulnerable with them. And we struggle in our lives with the same things as everybody else. So one of our children is autistic, just like all the things, right? And I it's like every bad thing brings about something good and amazing, and you just
Yeah.
are need to be looking for it. And so yeah, I really do operate quite a bit in faith. I also operate quite a bit with the idea that if I don't do it, who will?
Oh, yeah.
And so if I don't do this thing and I can provide this really special thing that I know if I bring to the table could change the system, could
Hmm.
change, so like even one life. We used to always have the mantra, just one more. Like one person, if we can just change one person's life, if financially we could change their life, creatively we could change their life, like we've done what we were supposed to do that day. And I think that
Yeah.
a lot of people aren't thinking in that way. They're thinking about just the money piece. They're thinking, oh, I need to make more money, or I need to. I'm not saying that we don't worry about those things, but I'm just saying,
Hmm.
like, if at the forefront you're thinking, if I don't do this thing, who will? That changes everything, right?
Yeah.
Because you know what you can bring to the table. And it's a vulnerable place to be. It's sometimes, when I say sometimes, it's a hard place to be all the time. But it's also a powerful place to be because it means you will force yourself to do things that maybe you wouldn't have done because you know that you have such a powerful effect if you choose it.
I just got goosebumps. I did. Thank you for that.
You're so
Now, I
welcome.
have some rapid fire questions for you if you're
Oh
up for
gosh.
it. But before we go into that, tell us about how people can learn more about what you're offering, the best places to connect with you.
Okay, well, so I know a lot of you here are entrepreneurs, but this might just be fun for you. So my second book just came out this year. It's called Make Art That
Oh,
Sells. We keep all my books. We try to keep them short. There's also Audible versions that you can get that are fun. And this particular book called Make Art That Sells, at the very end, like every chapter unravels a piece of a formula that you can then input into your own design business. Now, those of you who with regular businesses, you can still work the formula as well. And then
cool.
every chapter, and then by the end, you have this full formula. But this is where it's fun for designers. Every chapter features an artist. So Pablo Picasso or Van
Oh,
Gogh
cool.
or whatever. So you get the story of a little like short blurb about this artist and how they relate to the formula and how it works. But I will tell you the formula, we've used it for other things, and it totally works for most businesses that are product based of some sort. So my daughter is a creative writer. So in the product category, instead of putting stickers, if you want to be a sticker designer, we put books. And so then you're choosing your medium, you're choosing your themes, you're choosing your style, you're choosing your volume, and so you're still choosing all these things in the formula.
Yeah.
So anyway, all of that to say, I have a masterclass and you normally costs money. I'm going to give it to you for free. So
Oh,
all you have to do is go to makeartbook.com. The
okay.
code I want you to put in, the book is there. You don't have to get the book. Just go to the next line. You can just click on the link and put in the code MakeArt, and it will give you the class for free. And the class has like 6 or 7 videos in it. It has the formula. You can download a worksheet, and it'll just give you more information on how to make art that sells, or in your case, might be
Yeah.
to make blank that sells, because we talk about
Perfect.
distribution strategies.
That's incredible. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, rapid fire questions. What's your favorite book?
Is this nonfiction or fiction? Or does it
Either way, either one,
Pride and
or one of each.
Prejudice?
Yes.
I'm like I know
Yes.
that for a fact. Like Pride and Prejudice is my favorite book.
So
So,
good. Yes, I'm with you there. Favorite food?
fried chicken.
Yeah, yum. Yeah,
I'm originally from Tennessee. I grew up in Tennessee, so
so it totally makes sense. Yeah.
fried chicken.
What's your biggest pet peeve?
Lateness, which is really
Yeah.
quite ironic. My husband is very late all the time. That's probably why it's become that. But yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, people say you're attracted to your opposite, but you're attracted to your opposite in terms of like certain behaviors and like
Yeah.
communication styles and, Yeah, my husband's the same way. He's always late. I'm the person who's always 20 minutes early at least for
Yes.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although I
Yeah.
think we've converged, like after 24 years, we're starting to converge to the middle. I'll be like a little bit late to like,
Yeah.
accommodate him. Anyway, it's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny how that happens over a relationship, right? You find your middle. Who inspires you?
Right now I'm really enjoying Joanne Gaines.
Yeah.
I know that's kind of a funny answer, but I think she and Oprah and even Martha Stewart, I've kind of looking at all three of them a little bit as I've been thinking about my own career. But this whole idea of like you do something big, like you have a show, like Joanna Gaines or Oprah, they have a show that kind of feels like the epitome. And then they go say something like, hey, what if we had a whole channel? Right. And I
Yeah.
think people don't think that next level very often. And that's a really good example of that. That's kind of what we're doing right now with our business. And I think I'm just really relating that to that because it's like this whole nother set of challenges that are quite scary. And it would be safer just to do another show, right? It'd be just safer to just whatever the thing is that you do.
Yeah.
But what would it be like to own a whole channel, right?
Absolutely.
It's interesting.
Yeah, there's always that next level, right? There's always somewhere else you can grow into. What are 3 things you would take with you to a deserted island?
My heavens. A sketchbook.
Nice.
And I guess I probably need a set of color pencils or something if I'm taking
Yeah.
the sketchbook. That is really hard. I was going to say, I guess I could can I take a radio or a TV?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's
Okay.
your island.
I would take a
Yeah.
TV. I'm like, TV? I was like, can I take a book? I don't want to
Sure.
take a book because I'm like, I need a whole library. That's not going to work out. So maybe I'll take a TV. So,
Yeah.
I could take the internet though.
Yeah.
Shoot.
Yeah.
Or I can take my computer. Oh my gosh, this is so
Yes.
hard. This is probably the hardest question I've ever had. I would take a
Wow.
computer because you don't need a TV, right? And
Yeah.
internet. And then I should be able to draw online so I don't need my sketchbook, right?
There you go.
So that's 2 things. Can I take my husband or my kids?
Sure.
Okay.
You can take
My
both
family.
if you want. You can take
Okay,
your family.
thanks.
Yeah, we'll
Thanks.
count that as one.
Whoa, that would be hard. Deserted
I
island.
know, right?
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated by how people answer. 'Cause some people are so practical and they're like a machete, a water filtering device. I'm like, where
Oh,
my mind goes to like, I'd bring my Kindle, like my
I know. I was like,
dogs.
if I have a computer with internet, then I can look up all the survival techniques and look up every
Yeah.
plant, maybe, that's on the
Yes.
island. I really wasn't thinking about surviving and living. I was just like, I'm stuck on this island. That's really what I was thinking.
That's
So,
where my mind goes too. But it's always interesting what people pick. Who's a celebrity you would like to have dinner with, dead or alive?
that is really hard. Celebrity.
Yeah,
Celebrity or just someone famous?
just someone famous.
Maybe this is a really random one, but I think it's because I'm into history right now. Maybe like Coco Chanel
Oh, cool.
or maybe even Christian Dior.
Yeah,
Like just someone who was like kind of trying to build the fashion industry in the 1930s, 40s, 50s. Just I'm
Yes.
kind of fascinated by that era a little bit.
yeah, and that totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And last one, your go-to karaoke song.
Pro- Don't Stop Believing, Journey, probably.
Great one. That is a great song.
Doesn't mean I sing it well, but like
Doesn't matter.
I mean, I will
Yeah.
I will sing to it. So
Nice. I love it. And any final thoughts you'd like to leave the audience with today?
if you are an entrepreneur and you're listening to this, I have accidentally, but also purposely built an amazing couple of businesses here. And I am telling you, you can do it. I
Yeah.
have people tell me I can't do things all the time. Use that as fuel and just push forward because you absolutely can do it. You just have to choose to.
Great advice. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Teri.